Chapter 4. An Atypical Acolyte. Kai didn't sleep a wink lying in the infirmary staring at the ceiling all night. He was replaying over and over in his head the words Arden had said, and the choice he had laid before him. Kai had thought of rejecting it outright, simply taking a life of quiet, away from crowds. It wouldn't be so bad. He'd be alone, but he'd have books, and he wouldn't be in service to anyone. And the prospect of becoming one of the mages he had resented for so long seemed abhorrent. But, mulling it over, he was reminded that while Arden may be a mage, he was nothing like Umbree. He genuinely seemed to care about others beyond his own interests, and an acolyte wasn't the same as a servant. Not to mention, he had gone to such an extent to save Kai's life. While he had often thought of mages with disdain, he could not discount that Arden seemed different, honorable. If his offer was in earnest, would it be so bad to become a mage like him?
"Good morning,"
Marine sang brightly as she entered the infirmary.
"I trust you slept well?"
Kai slowly sat up to greet her, wincing once again from the wound on his side. Marine noticed his discomfort.
"Your injuries are still mending, I'm afraid, but this,"
Marine placed a bottle on the side table next to Kai's bed,
"should help with that."
Kai picked up the bottle and inspected the swirling orange liquid within as Marine went about refilling the water basin and pulling out fresh bandages. "What is it?" Kai inquired.
"A healing potion. It contains certain magical plants and herbs, collected from Iselia and other realms, that have been proven to help treat wounds and lessen pain. It will help speed your recovery."
Kai opened the bottle and took a deep breath. He couldn't pinpoint any spice within that was familiar to him. If he had to pick something close, he would say the potion smelled like mint, garlic, and juniper. It had a very strong, bitter scent to it, one that made Kai instantly retract the bottle from his nose.
"It does not smell the best,"
Marine noted his reaction.
"but it works far better than it tastes, I can assure you."
Kai eyed the bottle carefully, took a deep breath, and quickly chugged the entire contents, trying his best not to gag. Once the bottle was empty, he set it back down on the table. As Kai tried to clear the last remaining taste of the potion from his mouth, he noticed that Marine had been right. Almost immediately, he felt less sore, and sitting up felt easier. She smiled in acknowledgement.
"Better?"
she asked. "Much," Kai replied. Marine grinned brightly, adding, "Good," as she went back to setting up vials on the table. Kai realized that he had never gotten a chance to properly thank her for saving his life. "Thank you, Lady Marine," Kai stated sincerely, "for all you've done."
"Your thanks is appreciated, but completely unnecessary, Kai,"
Marine replied, collecting the empty potion bottle.
"I am happy to help."
Marine, like Arden, did not seem bothered by the fact that Kai was human. She did not speak down to him or look at him with disgust. It was a reaction he was unfamiliar with after his life on Helia, but one he was grateful for nonetheless. "Are healing potions like that rare?" Kai asked, gesturing toward the empty bottle in Marine's hand.
"Not necessarily rare, but the strength and effectiveness depends on the one who produced it. Potions made by healers such as myself are far more powerful than ones whipped up by a mage who does not possess the talent, such as Arden."
Kai remembered Arden stating that all mages could heal to various degrees. He then thought of the spell Arden had recited after Umbree attacked him, but could not think of the words. "When I was injured on Helia, I remember Lord Arden chanted a spell?"
"Sylvan Tailor,"
Marine instantly replied.
"In Ancient, it literally means stitch skin. It's a basic healing spell mages will use in the field to mend superfluous wounds or stop bleeding. But for more serious injuries, the assistance of a healer and potions, such as the one you just drank, is often required."
It was strange to Kai that Marine answered his questions without hesitation. All the time in Umbree's service, he had not learned even a sliver of the information Marine was relaying to him freely. "You are very open with your knowledge of magic," Kai noted with an air of bewilderment. Marine looked confused.
"Is that unusual?"
"Magic is forbidden to humans on Helia, and the punishment for trying to learn is severe. Even outside of Helia, I doubt many would be happy to know of a human learning the craft.
Ah,
Marine stated in understanding.
Well, since you've not been outside Helia until now, I feel the need to share a secret with you that is well known throughout the 6 realms.
Marine leaned slightly closer as Kai waited with rapt attention. In one exaggerated breath, she whispered,
Idiots are everywhere.
Kai chuckled as Marine added with a grin,
I find it best to pay them no mind or risk becoming one of them yourself. Besides, if you do decide to take Arden's offer, you'll be learning far more intricate spells than just basic healing magic.
You would have no objection, then? To a human learning the craft? Marine crossed her arms and pondered for a second.
Well, I suppose that depends on the human. If you're asking if I would have an issue with a thief, or a ruffian, or some brute becoming a mage, then I would have to say most definitely that I do.
She smiled at Kai.
But if you're asking me if I would have an issue with you becoming a mage, then I would have to say most certainly not. I rather think it would be a welcome addition, in fact.
Kai fell silent to her praise, uncertain of how to respond.
Your race is not important, Kai. Despite what others may say to the contrary, Arden asked you to be his acolyte because he sees in you the same thing I do. You are courageous, intelligent, and kind. And those are qualities that I am sorry to say are in rather short supply nowadays, especially amongst mages.
Kai shifted slightly, uncomfortable with the description she had given of his character. Marine noticed his unease.
What?
She inquired. I believe you and Lord Arden think too much of me, Kai stated honestly.
Marine
mumbled in acknowledgement, thinking over his interpretations.
Or, she finally stated, could it be that you think too little of yourself?
Kai met her gaze as she beamed back at him. He could tell she was being earnest. In truth, he wasn't sure what he was capable of. But it was apparent Marine and Arden saw promise in him. Could they both be wrong?
Now,
Marine stated, grabbing strips of white cloth from the armoire.
Let us address those bandages, shall we?
Arden steered clear of Kai for the next few days, checking in with Marine on his condition instead. He wanted to not only give him time to recuperate, but a chance to thoroughly think over his decision, without pressure. If Kai chose to learn the craft, he would be the first human mage in history, a decision that could very well paint a target on his back for those who thought humans were unfit. Of course, should he wish to leave Caelum Vallis and never deal with another mage as long as he lived, Arden couldn't really blame him. He had never agreed with the servitude forced on humans by some of his mage peers. The belief that mages were above any race was the opposite of everything they were supposed to stand for. A few days later, Marine told Arden that Kai was completely healed and ready to leave the infirmary at any time. Arden thought it as good a time as any to see if he had arrived at a decision. Opening the door to the infirmary, Arden was met by a familiar sight. Kai was once again positioned in front of the 2-story window, seated in one of the chairs he pulled from the table in the corner. He held a book about Izalia in his lap and was exchanging glances between the pages and the view. A spring storm raged outside, with blasts of cool air rushing in through the open window. The sky was steel gray as rain hammered against the roof outside, interspersed with the booming sounds of thunder in the distance. Honestly, Arden considered it to be abysmal weather, but Kai seemed transfixed by it nonetheless. I see you haven't tired of the view, Arden commented. Kai's head spun around, hearing Arden's voice before nodding in agreement. I honestly don't see myself ever getting tired of this view, he replied, closing the book and putting his full attention on Arden. Arden approached his seat and cast another glance at the window. I'm not sure what there is to look at today. It's not really sightseeing weather. Kai was silent for a moment before replying, Well, I guess that's a matter of perspective. When you grow up in a world scorched by sun, rain is a welcome occurrence. Valid point, Arden conceded. Kai turned his attention back to the storm outside. I suppose the same could be said for me. I've spent my whole life hating mages, but then again, the only mages I've ever known were Umbree and his friends. To judge an entire group on the actions of a few? That, too, is a matter of perspective. I take it that means you now see mages in a more favorable light? Well, a select few at least. But if I could become a mage like those few, then maybe even I could make a difference. At the very least, I'd get to see with my own eyes the realms I have only read about. Would it be worth it? Arden questioned. It will not be an easy path, especially for a human like you. Never meant to be a cobbled road, Kai muttered, almost under his breath. Arden caught him with a questioning gaze as Kai clarified, the things most worthwhile are often the most difficult. And the most dangerous. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. The dangers we face could very easily kill you. Kai paused for a moment, reminded of his rather recent brush with death. Humans are well acquainted with death, since it visits us more often than other races. I don't wish for it, but neither will I run from it. Kai's expression was unwavering, and Arden could see he had clearly made up his mind. He set the book down and rose to face Arden. Placing a hand over his chest, Kai gave a deep bow, stating, I would be honored to be your acolyte, Lord Arden. Arden chuckled and shook his head in response. Well then, in that case, stop calling me Lord. It's just Arden. Kai lifted his head and smiled back, nodding in acknowledgement. Arden had honestly never thought of taking on an apprentice before he had met Kai. He had spent enough time at Caelum Vallis watching the chosen, spoiled little rich brats flaunt the title Acolyte without ever understanding its meaning. From the time of his own Acolyte days, Arden had thought being on the council was essentially pledging your life to helping others. It seemed as though many others saw it as a status symbol, a title to impress with, nothing more. But Kai was different. Humans had long been considered fragile, pitiful, incapable. They could break easily, die easily, and were only useful as servants. Kai, however, had demonstrated more courage in the past few days than some mages had their entire life. As such, Arden was certain he would demonstrate to all who doubted it that humans were not the weak creatures they were thought to be. Well, I'm fairly certain by this point you've memorized every inch of the infirmary. Are you feeling well enough for a walk? When Kai nodded, Arden added, Then follow me, kid. Kai trailed behind Arden as he led them out of the infirmary and to a flight of stairs leading down to the main floor below them. As soon as they stepped off the bottom stair, Kai gaped at the sight before him. The passage opened to an enormous atrium. Spires of silver jutted out along the walls of the huge castle. White marble covered the floor. Every door leading off the main hall had a unique, ornate design cast in silver and jewels. Kai's eyes drifted upward. The ceiling was made entirely of glass, some 50 feet above his head. He could see the rain pounding down upon it. Watching the storm from such a vantage point was mesmerizing. The great hall was bustling with a variety of mages from all races. Kai could see orcs, goblins, elves, and dwarves standing together in different clusters about the main floor. They were all decked out in fitted robes made of silk and other fine cloth. Kai was wearing a white tunic and pants given to him by Marine. He imagined it was because his previous outfit had been coated in blood and cut to shreds. These garments were by far the finest cloth he had ever worn. Yet, they paled in comparison to the clothing around him. Kai noticed that everyone he passed stopped their conversation to turn and look at him, and he knew all too well it had nothing to do with his attire. As Kai weaved through the great hall, it was apparent humans were not a common occurrence here. Arden was completely unfazed by the onlookers, continuing to lead Kai through one door and then the next. I'll point out a few important places you'll want to know about, Arden stated while leading Kai around another bend. You'll get more accustomed to where things are in time. A variety of twists and turns later, he stopped in front of a pair of double doors at least 10 feet tall. They had the same kind of oak tree engraved on the front that Kai had seen engraved on Arden's flask. In this case, however, the base of the tree bridged the two doors, its branches stretching out to the edges of the entryway. I've seen this symbol before, Kai stated, looking over the grand tree. Arden gestured to the sigil on the front of the doors. That is Yggdrasil, the tree of wisdom and knowledge, a sacred deity to elfkind. We elves value knowledge and wisdom. He then noted dryly, it's compassion and understanding we often lack. Arden pushed open the double doors and entered. As Kai followed, he was met with an inspiring sight. Light streamed in from a giant stained glass image of Yggdrasil on the north wall, front and center of a grand library. Looking up, Kai could see rows and rows of bookshelves that seemed to never end. The stairs spiraled upward, each level opening up to a brand new row of books. Kai guessed the library must be 4 stories tall. He was captivated, looking up to the seemingly endless rows. Umbree's library had been a pebble in the ocean by comparison. Arden strode ahead, and Kai had to snap back to attention to keep from losing sight of him. Most of the books in here are beyond your capabilities as of now, Arden stated as he led Kai through row after row of wooden shelves. Not to mention the majority are written entirely in Ancient, the language of the Magi, as old as the creation stones themselves. So, don't be pulling random volumes off the shelves and practicing incantations when you have no idea what they do. There have been many acolytes greeted by an early grave attempting magic beyond their abilities. Nonetheless, knowledge is power, and this is where you will gain it. A majority of your time will probably be spent here delving into one of these dusty old books. I would gladly spend a lifetime here. Arden looked back to see Kai, gawking at the dizzying rows of bookcases in amazement. Arden smiled in response. A fan of the written word, I take it? I read every book I could in Umbree's library, said Kai, closely inspecting a book whose cover seemed to be made of some type of skin. Kai was certain he didn't want to know what creature had donated it. But this collection puts his to shame. Indeed, Arden responded. These volumes come from several millennia of collecting knowledge from mages and philosophers all over the 6 realms. Even if you had the lifespan of an elf, you could never hope to read them all. So, we will focus on the knowledge that can be obtained within a human's lifetime. But, first things first, knowing the language of the Magi is essential to reading almost all of these books. Kai nodded in determination. Arden continued his tour through the library, pointing out different sections and areas of study. Kai had never known there were different proficiencies of magic, but listening to Arden, he learned there were 9 schools of study. Alchemy was focused on brewing potions and elixirs. Evocation was offensive magic. Conjuration had to do with summoning of spirits, and teleportation was travel magic, including the creation of portals between worlds. Enchantment focused on manipulation of the mind and senses. Divination was reading the signs of nature to foretell fate. Remedium magic was amending of wounds and the curing of sickness. Transmutation was transforming a body or object from one thing to another. The one area considered off-limits to all mages was necromancy, dark magic, and manipulation of the dead. As Arden continued, Kai couldn't help but feel overwhelmed and anxious. It was an honor Arden thought him capable of being his acolyte, but it did fill him with apprehension about disappointing him. He couldn't understand how he could perform the feats Arden had listed so nonchalantly. He was human. He had never spoken to the spirits, brewed a potion, or enchanted anyone in the slightest. He felt as though there was a canyon, long and vast, between where he was and where Arden thought he could be. And standing on the precipice looking out, he hadn't the slightest clue of how he was ever going to jump it. Arden gave Kai a cursory tour of the library before guiding him back out to the castle's main atrium toward their next destination. Kai followed closely behind Arden, convinced that if he lost sight of him, he would be lost forever. The sheer size of the castle was intimidating. Twisting hallways leading off in all directions, and towers with winding staircases that led up and up far past Kai's line of sight. As Arden led him through the maze of marble and silver, he thought the first thing he would need would be a compass. Arden stopped outside 2 wooden doors, with grapes and fruit etched into the oak. "This is the dining hall," he declared, upon pushing the doors open. Kai could see long tables spread out across the width of the giant room, with seating for a few hundred people. At the head of the room were several large fires, with pots boiling over and the smell of a stew wafting through the air. A short, stocky, round, dwarven woman with blonde, frizzy hair stood over a very large pot, cutting vegetables and humming to herself. As Arden walked toward her, she glanced up at him.
"Ain't seen the likes of you in here in a while, Ard," she smiled. "Usually be requesting meals brought to your tower."
"I'm not much for communal dining," Arden replied. "But I wish to introduce my apprentice to you. Kai, this is Celeste, the chef for all of Caelum Vallis. Celeste, this is my acolyte, Kai." Kai bowed respectfully. "It is a pleasure to meet you, Lady Celeste." Celeste turned her gaze from Arden to Kai. A sudden shout caused Kai to snap his head up. Celeste came rushing out from behind the counters towards him. There was concern clearly written on her face, and Kai's first thought was it must be because he was human. It would be in line with all the other looks he had received walking the halls. Celeste grabbed Kai's hand and held out his arm, shaking her head from side to side.
"Would you look at him? Ain't nothing but skin and bones. Don't you eat, boy?"
Yes?" Kai stuttered, caught off guard by Celeste's reaction.
"Well, not nearly enough by the looks of it. That's no doubt this one's doing,"
Celeste commented, shooting an accusatory glare at Arden. She then leaned in to Kai and muttered,
"Don't you be taking to an elf's diet, lad. Munching on plants like you're grazing. Else you be looking like this, scrawny spindle."
"I heard that," grunted Arden. Celeste spun around with hands on her hips.
"Aye, and you was meant to."
Celeste turned back and patted Kai's hand comfortingly.
"Don't you worry, I'll see you get a proper meal brought to you. Something that'll put some meat on your bones."
"Thank you, Lady Celeste," Kai smiled back.
"And you can stop that lady nonsense. No understand on ceremony here. Celeste is fine."
Kai bowed his head slightly and replied, "As you wish, Celeste." Celeste nodded at Kai and grinned.
"Got manners, this one,"
she stated before looking to Arden.
"Obviously not something he's learned from you."
"I'm suddenly reminded why I don't frequent the kitchen that often," Arden muttered. Celeste laughed out loud.
"He's a stodger, that one. I's convinced he'd never find himself an acolyte. It's a pleasure to have you, Kai."
Kai was genuinely grateful. Celeste was the first person he had run into today who was welcoming to him, and Arden seemed to respect her, despite their verbal sparring.
"Well, will you be sticking around for dinner? Fixing a stew. Should be ready soon."
"A kind offer, Celeste, but we still have other places to see. If you could bring up a few bowls?"
"To your tower. Aye, I know, you antisocial bugger. I'll be bringing your plates up in a bit."
"Thank you, Celeste. Your disposition, as usual, is a breath of fresh air," Arden added with a grin, as Celeste grunted in response. He gave her a slight bow before starting to head toward the kitchen exit. Seeing his master leaving, Kai bowed to Celeste as well, stating, "It was a pleasure to meet you, Celeste." Celeste smiled back at Kai and said,
"Aye, same to you, Kai. Don't you be stranger now you hear."
Kai nodded in agreement and followed Arden back out to the castle's main hall. They made several other stops outside the castle once the storm had passed. Arden showed Kai the location of the castle greenhouse, the sparring grounds, the pond, the stables, and meeting hall for the maesters of the High Council. The meeting hall was a grand building, separate from the castle. It was at least 3 stories with the same marble design as the main building, but it also hosted a number of guest quarters apart from the main hall. Arden told him that the purpose of the meeting hall was to host guests from all over the 6 realms who came to plead their case while the council was in session. After the cases were stated, the council would then decide if the assistance of a mage was in order or if they would merely act as diplomats to settle the dispute. Kai was surprised by the explanation. He'd always gotten the impression that mages had no limits in using their magic to tip the scales of power in any way they saw fit. But according to Arden, their goal was to maintain balance and order, and any mage taking it upon themselves to disrupt that would be punished severely. As the sun began to once again dip back to the horizon, Arden led Kai back through the halls to the far east wing of the palace. He opened a solid wooden door leading to a twisting set of stairs that seemed to reach to the heavens. As they began to scale the stairs, Kai could see out the tiny portholes in the staircase, watching the landscape shrink the higher and higher they climbed. Kai had plenty of practice running up and down flights of stairs in Umbree's manor, but even he could feel himself getting winded as they continued to scale upward. After what seemed like an eternity, Arden finally stopped at a landing and opened yet another wooden door. "And this is where you'll spend most of your time," he added, stepping inside the room. Kai entered a 2-story circular room. Most of Caelum Vallis was ostentatiously decorated in white, silver, and silk. This room, however, was eclectic and homey, with wooden rafters and grey stone. The floor was made of well-fitted, wide walnut boards. It reminded Kai of a cottage set atop a mountain. Within the tower was a seating area in front of a fireplace. A high-backed chair and a sofa, both upholstered in deep brown leather, were positioned in front of it. On the far side of the room was a small wooden dining table next to a bar. There were double doors leading out to a large veranda that gave an amazing view of the landscape. Past the fireplace was another small staircase leading up to a loft in the 2nd story, with some sort of potion bench tucked beneath them. "This is the common area. My quarters are up the stairs there, and yours are over here." Arden opened a room to the right of the entryway. Kai entered a moderately sized bedroom. A smaller fireplace off to the left hosted a side table and plush armchair. There was a tall bookcase filled with a variety of volumes off to the right. The center wall of the room framed a large bay window that let in an immense quantity of light, and whose sill was cluttered with several different types of herbs in porcelain pots. A thick mattress rested on a platform in the far left corner of the room, right next to a full-sized wardrobe. "Your washroom is through here?" Arden pointed to the door to the right of his bed. Kai peeked his head inside to see a full bathroom complete with a clawfoot bathtub, sink, and indoor running water. Indoor water had been considered a rare luxury in Hellia. Even Umbree's manor didn't possess it. Kai remembered many cold wash-bucket baths in the dead of winter, not to mention the arduous task of carrying buckets of hot water upstairs to the 2nd floor whenever Umbree wished to bathe. Kai walked over to marvel at the bed, placing a hand upon it. It had a warm quilt and a feather pillow. He had never had his own bed, unless you counted his pallet in the woodshed, which he really didn't. In the shack with his mother, they had just slept on mats on the ground. "It's not much," Arden commented, as Kai's eyes darted around the room that now belonged to him. "But I value solitude above all else, far away from distraction, and you can't get much further away than this." Kai wasn't sure how much more lavish you could get. This was already a far finer room than you could have found in Umbree's manor. No cracked windows, leaky roof, or furniture splintering from age. It was all well crafted, well kept, and certainly leaps and bounds above what he was accustomed to. Arden walked over and opened the wardrobe in the room. "You'll find your robes in here," he said, showing Kai some that already hung in his closet. "They are required dress for all mages of the High Council. The cloth is enchanted and serves as light protection from offensive spells." Kai pulled out one of the robes to get a better look at it. The first of several was deep blue. The fabric seemed a mixture of cotton and silk with a light sheen to it. The top portion resembled a fitted tunic with a collar. The bottom half was a much looser fit, with a hem extended down to the ankles. There was a silver design around the sleeves and buttons in the center. A thick leather belt looped around the middle. It closely resembled the robes Arden wore, although it was far less detailed. "You'll also need this," Arden added, handing Kai a golden amulet. There was a star sigil in the center of the medallion, but Kai had no idea what it meant. "Later, you'll learn to focus your thoughts to communicate with it, but for now, it'll help you center your magic when you cast. Keep it on always. It is the sign of a mage of the High Council." Kai put the golden chain around his neck, the sigil coming to rest across his heart. He inspected the amulet in his hand, turning it over in the light. A question nagged at him, and it was one he felt compelled to have answered. "Not many within the 6 realms can wield magic," Kai began carefully. "In fact, there are few by comparison that can." Arden nodded in acknowledgement. "True? Then are you sure that I'm one of them?" "Absolutely," Arden replied without hesitation. Kai was stunned by his rapid-fire response. "How can you be sure?" "Because of the creation stone," Arden continued. "Magic recognizes magic. If a non-magic wielder tried to grab a magical item such as that, the item would react and protect itself, almost always resulting in injury to the user trying to wield it. But you were able to swipe that stone from Umbree as easily as if you were lifting a pocket watch, and the stone had no issue with you holding it." Kai thought back. Now that Arden mentioned it, Kai had felt an aura emanating from the stone, though he hadn't thought it was unusual at the time. He remembered Arden warning him not to touch the stone, and he had seemed surprised when he had seen Kai holding it. Kai had assumed that was relief that he had been able to retrieve it from Umbree. Trust me, kid, you've got the gift. The only thing you're missing is instruction, which is what I'm here for. So, I suggest you get settled in. Arden headed toward the door of Kai's room. Your lessons begin tomorrow. Kai felt a renewed sense of encouragement as Arden left. Knowing that he had the gift meant learning the craft was an attainable goal. To be able to control fire with his palm, summon wind, and bend the elements to his whim had always been nothing more than a dream. Kai was slowly realizing that the dream could come true. Granted, it was still a long road to reach that destination, but right now, that deep canyon he stood before felt just a little bit smaller. Umbree was pacing back and forth in a small forest clearing. It was the dead of night, with the light of a full moon shining through the trees. They were currently hidden in a camp in Proxa, far away from any villages. Umbree had cast a blood circle around their camp, masking their presence from anyone attempting to scry for them. BtCR and Tora stood off to the side, crouching on rocks and noticeably on edge. It had taken several days for them to cover their tracks from the council and reach out to Orin. Wishing to speak in person, Umbree had suggested this destination for a meeting. He still wasn't certain how to tell him that he had failed, not only at killing Arden, but at keeping the stone in his possession. Orin would undoubtedly be upset, which could very well mean death for Umbree, but not even death would be an escape if Orin wished it so. Umbree racked his brain to try and think of an explanation that would placate him and hopefully preserve Orin's goodwill and their bargain. He was so deep in thought, he did not notice the figure appearing in the brush behind him, nor the one walking toward him through the trees. Their shadows were silent, every step light and swift.
Umbree.
The figure from the tree spoke, and Umbree, Tora, and BtCR all jumped in response. A white-haired male elf stood before the group, his pale skin practically glowing in the moonlight. His crimson eyes were clearly visible, even in the darkness. He wore a smile from ear to ear that was no doubt meant to be welcoming, but instead unsettled anyone who looked upon it.
Apologies, my friends,
Orin stated in a raspy and quiet voice, for he did not need to shout. When he spoke, all listened.
I didn't mean to frighten you.
Of course not, Lord Orin,
Umbree replied with a deep bow.
We are thankful you could meet us here.
Certainly. I heard about your troubles, Umbree. I'm glad you were able to find a safe location, free from the prying eyes of the council.
Thank you for your concern, my lord.
I also heard that you lost your house in a fire. Pity. It was quite beautiful. You have my condolences, my friend.
Yes, thank you, my lord.
Umbree was unsettled. Why wasn't Orin mentioning the stone? Or Arden? Surely if he knew all that, he must know what happened. Umbree's failure.
My lord, if I may,
Umbree started.
I would like the chance to explain.
Orin looked toward him, still wearing an eerie smile.
Explain?
Yes, about what happened with Arden. How I lost the stone?
Orin waved a hand dismissively. You needn't worry about such trifles now, my friend. Not when you have the council after you. You must worry about yourself first.
A second figure stepped out from the brush, causing the group to spin around in surprise. It was clearly a shifter by his reptilian eyes. His large form was formidable, and he had long black hair that blended in with the darkness around him. He gazed down at the group as though they were prey.
No need to be alarmed. This is Ammon, my right hand. He will be continuing the search for the Creation Stone.
Umbree's head snapped around in shock.
But the deal we struck!
Umbree asked, his voice sounding desperate.
You did not hold up your end of it, my friend. Surely, you don't expect me to hold up mine?
Wait, my lord, please. I can get the stone back. I know where it is, where it must be. It is at Caelum Vallis.
The fortress of the High Council, in the heart of Iselia. It is no simple task, strolling in there.
But I can get in. There are ways to get in. I was a member of the High Council for many years. I know that land and the castle like the back of my hand. I will be more prepared this time. There will be no mistakes. Please, my lord. I am still your best bet at getting you what you wish.
Orin sighed and sat down on a nearby log. He was silent for some time as the group looked on with bated breath.
Very well. I think you will find that I am a firm believer in second chances. Not only that, but I will assist you, Umbree.
Umbree was gracious but cautious as he asked,
You will, my lord?
Of course,
Orin answered with that unsettling smile.
After all, helping you helps both of us.
Umbree bowed deeply.
You are too kind, my lord. Rest assured, I will not fail you again.
Certainly not. After all, no one who serves me makes that mistake twice.
Umbree shivered slightly at the veiled threat as Orin and Ammon turned to leave the camp. Umbree felt it urgent to convey to Orin that this would not be a quick endeavor.
It will take time, my lord,
Umbree blurted out. Orin turned back at the sudden outburst, glaring down at Umbree.
The council will be on edge. No doubt Arden has relayed to them my interest in the stone or mentioned me giving it to you. It will take time for them to relax, for an opening to present itself, to find its whereabouts, my lord.
Orin flashed his most egregious smile in response, his cold expression shining out from behind his crimson eyes.
Worry not, my dear friend. You will find that I am nothing if not patient.